At some point in your life, you come to the realization that all of your beliefs were false. The revelation that my wife, Natalie, was having an affair with my best friend, Tyler, was that moment for me. 6 years had passed since our marriage. Since elementary school, Tyler had been my closest companion. I had complete faith in both of them, and they, in the worst way imaginable, they deceived me. I therefore choose to hold them accountable. I'll tell you how I staged my own murder, and how I made their entire world a misery. The time I realized a bruising was the first sign. Natalie's collarbone had a tiny, faint imprint on it. I recall feeling a knot in my stomach as I stared at it. I said, "What's that?" She hardly looked down. Oh, I must have bumped into something. A falsehood. I was aware. However, I wasn't yet prepared to accept reality. I decided to overlook it, for a time, until I become aware of the warning flags. She started to guard her phone more. She began going out at strange times. Additionally, she would pause for an excessive amount of time each time I asked her where she was. I therefore took a step that I never would have otherwise taken. I installed a tracker in her vehicle. Discovering the affair, I was being paranoid. I assured myself that I would verify it once, determine that she was telling the truth, and then disregard it. However, what happened when I accessed the location history? Tyler's residence was where her automobile had been parked. For 5 hours. My hands were shaking as I sat there looking at the television. I wouldn't want my worst enemy to suffer the gut punch of treachery. The anger, the sadness, the embarrassment. My spouse, my closest companion, together, as if I were non-existent. That's when I realized I had no intention of confronting them. I wasn't going to cry, scream, or plead. I intended to ruin them. The initial phase, turning into a ghost, I planned for the next few days, observing them, following every action. She would go to him whenever I was on a business trip. Each and every time. So I took advantage of it. I informed her that I was going on a work vacation. I'll be gone for the weekend. Don't wait up. And when I left through that door, I got to work laying my trap, contextualizing them for murder. I parked my car close to Tyler's house in a quiet park. I extracted a needle and drew enough blood from myself to create the appearance of a crime scene. I covered the car seat with it, sprinkled some on the floor. For more precaution, a bullet was even shot into the passenger seat. It had to seem real blood, a bullet hole, a missing body. I then grabbed my laptop and wrote my lawyer one last email. "If anything happens to me, look at my wife and best friend." I sent it. I then turned to go and vanished. I'm calling 911 on my own. A woman contacted 911 around 8:30 a.m. She reported seeing an abandoned vehicle with its doors open and blood all over it. However, there was no body. That lady was me. I reported my own murder using a voice changer and hung up before they could ask me any more questions. And I was fully aware of what was going to happen next. The police would track down my vehicle. They would notice the blood. The hole was caused by a bullet, and they would begin searching for my killer. Furthermore, who were the sole suspects? Tyler and Natalie. Because I had emailed them just hours earlier to indicate I was going to confront them. And now, I had left. Observing everything develop, I watched the police rush the park from where I was hiding. As they looked for my body, I watched. And when did they arrive at my house? Natalie had no idea. She informed them that I should have been in Pittsburgh, that my presence in the town was not even intended. They then gave my phone a call, and when it rang in my blood-stained, abandoned car, I was aware they laid the trap. And they were going to fall into it sooner or later. The ideal offense. The cops arrived at Tyler's house a few hours later. They informed him that I had vanished, that my car was discovered unattended, that a bullet hole and blood were present. Tyler? He stopped, Natalie? She broke down in tears. Not the tears of a grieving, bereaved widow. No, these were tears of guilt. The tears of a person who knew they had made a mistake, but was still unsure of how serious it was. When was the last time she saw me? The police questioned her. I was in Pittsburgh, she said. If she had called me, they inquired. Yes, she replied. They then requested to look over my phone logs. And when they realized that I had just called from here in town, she broke, because she suddenly realized she had just told the police a falsehood. They were aware of it. The repercussions start news of my murder circulated within hours. News outlets referred to the incident as the mystery of the missing husband. Hours were spent questioning Natalie. Then Tyler was brought in. What's the best part? They began to turn against one another. Natalie warned the police that Tyler might have harmed her. I hadn't seen Tyler in weeks, he said. They both lacked an alibi, considering that I had insured it. How their nightmare started. They spent the next 2 weeks in torment. The whole community turned against them. Behind their backs, people whispered, referred to them as murderers. They were disowned by their relatives. And me? I sat back and watched it all come apart. For this reason, this was only the start of their most terrible nightmare. And I was just beginning. Karma always catches up, so the saying goes, that the cosmos will finally find equilibrium on its own. But me? I couldn't afford to wait for karma. I had to turn into it. And now, as I saw my so-called best buddy and my unfaithful wife suffer the consequences of their betrayal, I came to the realization I could never have imagined a greater form of retaliation than this. So I wasn't merely punishing them. They were destroying themselves because of me. The initial symptoms of panic. I stayed hidden in a motel 2 towns away, using a burner phone to keep tabs on things. The missing people report was the first step. After that, the cops discovered my car with a bullet hole in the door, blood on the seats, and a buzzing phone in the passenger seat. Natalie broke down when the news came in. She wailed, trembling, and hardly able to speak. He was supposed to be in Pittsburgh. He wasn't even supposed to be here. But Tyler? He stopped. That's when I realized he was afraid. For men like Tyler, they are able to deceive, cheat, and lie. But when do they truly sense fear? They shatter. The police close-in detectives arrived at Natalie's home the following morning. When did she last see me? They asked. Repeating the same untruth, she stumbled. He was in Pittsburgh. He had a work trip. They then took out my phone records, though. Then why was his last call made from right here in town? She stopped. The investigator spoke calmly but firmly as he leaned forward. Miss S. Mitchell, were you and your husband having problems? She hesitated for a moment, but it was sufficient. For those who are guilty, they hesitate all the time. The interrogation of Tyler. Then they brought Tyler in. He was seated in a sterile, frigid room with fluorescent lights that flickered. We know Logan found out about the affair. We know he confronted you that night. And now, he's missing, presumed dead. Tyler? He fell apart. He slammed his hands on the table and yelled, I didn't kill him. We were friends. I would never, however. The investigators merely gazed at him. For them, he had a reason, and he appeared more guilty the more he panicked. Natalie betrays. Natalie made her worst error 2 days later. Tyler was turned on by her. With her voice shaking, she wiped away the phony tears as she sat down with the officers and said, I don't know what happened to my husband, but if someone hurt him, it wasn't me. The detectives looked at each other. Then who was it? She took a deep breath. Tyler. Logan confronted him that night. And now he's gone. That's not a coincidence, is it? And suddenly he was thrown under the bus by her. Tyler? He blew up. Are you serious right now? You think I killed him? The final thread of their trust broke in that instant. Because right now, They had more going on than a covert affair. They were attempting to set one another up for homicide. The entire world is against them. The story was picked up by the media. Husband missing best friend and wife, suspected of murdering a love affair. You could see their faces everywhere. As they passed, people whispered. Tyler's business ceased receiving customers. Natalie was placed on indefinite leave by her employer. What about their families? They had no desire to interact with them. For the sake of the world, they were more than merely infidelity. They were murderers. The tipping point. They were both taken back in by the police a week later. However, this time, they were not in the same group. They were questioned independently. Natalie sobbed while trembling and clutching her arms, as if they were her only means of support. I didn't do anything. You have to believe me. Tyler? His eyes were wild, and his hands were in his hair as he paced the room. This is insane. You're insane. This is all her fault. Detectives lowered their voices and leaned nearer. Then prove it. What really happened that night? And suddenly, they turned on one another. Because when individuals believe they are going to collapse, when they sense the walls closing in, they always try to find someone else to blame. And me? I simply watched as they tore each other to pieces. The last bit of the coffin, it was 2 weeks later. There was still no body for the police, not a weapon. Just 2 suspects drowning in their own guilt and a missing husband. Then, it was time, I determined. I entered the police department. Be calm, gathered, and incredibly lively. The front desk officer became pale. I need to speak to a detective, I replied. Why? I grinned. Because I heard you've been looking for me. The major disclosure, I was sitting in an interrogation room 30 minutes later, watching mayhem break out. The door opened wide. It was Natalie who entered first. When she noticed me, she staggered to a halt. The color left her face. Logan? She muttered, her body shaking and her eyes wide. Tyler trailed closely after her. He froze the moment he spotted me. He didn't flinch, didn't take a breath. He simply gazed at me as if he were gazing at a phantom. And me? I simply folded my arms, grinned, and sat back in my chair. Miss me? Natalie broke down in tears. Tyler? He appeared to be on the verge of being ill. For what reason? I should have been dead. And now, they were aware. They were aware that I had harmed them. What's the best part? They were unable to change it. The instant they acknowledged, I leaned back, out of Natalie's reach, as she reached for me. She gasped and said, "Oh my God, Logan, I thought you were." Instead, "We thought you were dead." I cocked my head. "Did you?" I said in a composed tone. "Or did you just hope?" She sobbed and choked. At last, Tyler was able to speak. He began, "You," but his throat was dry. He took a deep swallow. "You did this. You set us up." I gave a shrug. "You set yourselves up. I just let you destroy each other." Leaning forward, the detective observed all that was happening. "So," he said in a humorous tone, "you faked your own disappearance to teach them a lesson?" I grinned. "That about sums it up." The detective whistled softly. "Damn," whispered he. "That's cold." I smiled. "No," I replied. "That's justice." Have you ever witnessed someone come to terms with the end of their life? You can actually observe in real time as their soul departs their body. When Natalie and Tyler entered the questioning room and found me seated there, that is precisely what happened. Alive, inhaling, grinning, they had been arguing, blaming one another, and living in constant terror of being imprisoned for a fictitious murder for weeks. And now, they were aware. They were aware that I had harmed them. What's the best part? They were unable to change it. The repercussions of an ideal crime. There was no justification for the detectives to hold them. They hadn't done anything illegal. However, in a societal sense, in public, they had already been found guilty. It damaged their names. The news was filled with pictures of their faces. The distraught wife who became a primary suspect was Natalie. The best friend, Tyler, may have been more knowledgeable than he admitted. And even though they may have left that station at any time, in actuality, they were not free, because they were still believed to have done it by everyone. And that was worse than going to jail. The effect on the public almost quickly. The story was taken up by the news. Missing husband found alive wife, and best friend still under suspicion. People went crazy. They were ripped apart by the internet. Natalie's employment was terminated. Her supervisor referred to it as too much bad publicity. But let's face it, nobody wants a murder suspect in their workplace. Tyler's company? Destroyed beyond recognition. He was no longer trusted. Customers withdrew. False Yelp reviews were posted by people who called him a cheater and a suspected killer. His standing? Lost. They made an effort to clarify, to make their argument. It didn't matter, though, because in the world's perspective, they were at fault. Natalie's final, hopeless attempt. She arrived at my residence a couple of weeks later. I wasn't shocked. I assumed that would ultimately occur. She was standing there when I opened the door, resembling the ghost of the woman I knew. She has dark circles beneath her eyes, untidy hair, trembling hands. Logan, she inhaled deeply. I folded my arms and rested against the doorframe. "You've got 2 minutes." She flinched. She said, "Why did you do this to me? I loved you. I made a mistake, but I never wanted this." I cocked my head. "You loved me?" I asked again in a monotone voice. Desperately, she nodded. "Then why did you sleep with my best friend?" She recoiled as if I had given her a slap. She whispered, "It just happened," as her eyes darted off. I chuckled. I shook my head and asked, "That's the best you've got? It just happened? That's what you're going with?" Her lip quivered. She stutteringly said, "I was lonely, Logan. You were always working, always busy. So your solution was to screw Tyler?" she cried. "I just want you back. Please. I'll do anything." She caught my attention for a long time. I then stepped forward, spoke softly, and muttered, "You don't exist to me anymore." Her breath caught. Logan, in her face. I closed the door. And I never saw her again after that. The collapse of Tyler, I didn't see him again. However, I heard rumors. Individuals conversed. He moved in with his folks, apparently. Began to consume alcohol. Not able to work. What's the best part? Nobody gave a damn. Because once people realize who you truly are, and you're called a liar and cheater, they never forget. Tyler, too, for the remainder of his wretched life, he had to put up with that. The life that they will never lead, I went on. New position. If fresh love, thought fresh life. What's the best part? I stopped thinking about them. For as long as they continued to peer over their shoulders, wallowing in guilt and regret, I had too much going on. And that, of all the retaliation, that was the best. Finding out is often regarded as the hardest part of betrayal. The heartbreaking insight, the heartache, and the rage that shakes your palms. However, they are mistaken. The worst thing? It is the aftermath. Because as I progressed, as I created something new, Tyler and Natalie were trapped in the hell they made. What's the best part? They were forced to cope with it. All of them. Unmarried. Day. Natalie's decline. Natalie made an effort to maintain her composure after losing her job. She submitted applications for new jobs, attempted to portray herself as a regular woman going through a tough time. However, nobody wanted to hire her. For who wants to collaborate with a man who has been accused of murder? Behind her back, people whispered, she was utterly cut off by old friends. Her own relatives? They also didn't think she was real. Her mom stated, "If Logan had never come back, you'd be in prison right now. Do you understand that?" Natalie lost it. Since she was aware of her narrow escape. And now, she had nothing. Tyler's horrible life. Tyler made an effort to defend himself. He always believed he was the most intelligent person present. He was able to talk his way out of any situation. However, you cannot salvage a damaged reputation by lying. His calls were no longer being returned. He was dropped by clients. He was even shunned by his own brother. "I don't want to be associated with you, man. You're toxic." Tyler began to drink more, reducing the amount of time spent out. And finally, he vanished. Natalie's last attempt. Months went by. Then, unexpectedly, I received a message from Natalie. A long, frantic email. "Logan, I don't expect you to forgive me. But please, I need you to know I'm sorry. I ruined everything. I lost everything. And I have no one to blame but myself." I spent a lot of time looking at the screen. After that, I erased the email. No answer, no resolution, since I didn't require it. I had let her go already. She was merely one more phantom from my history. What about ghosts? They are not deserving of another chance. The most recent time I heard of them, years went by. I created a life I was happy with. A new city, new acquaintances, fresh love. And them? They vanished. I was informed that Tyler had relocated across the nation and was working at a job that was a dead end. Natalie remained, but she was alone herself. No husband, no profession, no future. Simply say you're sorry. What's the best part? They never occurred to me. Because they were mired in the past, wallowing in the possibilities. I had too much going on. And that, the true retaliation was that. Retaliation is always discussed as though it were a big, blazing event, as if it were about yelling in someone's face, causing them pain, and seeing them plead for forgiveness. But actual retaliation? It is silent. It is the ability to wake up each morning without experiencing any pain at all. It's sharing laughter with those who genuinely care about you. It's the knowledge that those who have deceived you are out there, seeing you succeed as their own lives collapse. And that, Natalie and Tyler experienced precisely that. The last hit following the end of the controversy and the cessation of discussion over the missing husband mystery. Natalie made an effort to move on. She resumed dating. At least she made an effort. But all the men she encountered, they looked up her name on Google. The headlines were visible to them. She was previously suspected of killing her own spouse. According to what they read, they also had no desire to interact with her. "I feel like I'm walking around with a permanent scarlet letter," she said to a mutual friend. Excellent. She was worthy, because betrayal does just that. It comes after you. It discolors you. A few stains too. They never emerge. Tyler's lowest point. An old acquaintance was the last person to tell me about Tyler. "Man, have you seen him lately? He looks like hell." He had apparently lost everything, not able to work, returned to living with his parents. Staring at the bottom of a whiskey glass, I spent most of my evenings at a bar. The man who once believed he was superior to everyone, right now, he was nothing. What's the best part? He did it to himself. I didn't do anything. I didn't have to. Because some individuals ruin their own lives simply by being themselves. The last time one considered them, it was an evening in the summer. The woman I loved and I were enjoying a beer on my back patio as we watched the sunset. A woman who truly held me in high regard, a lady who would never turn on me. And at that very moment, I became aware that it had been months since I had given Natalie or Tyler any thought. They simply vanished, as if I had just woken up from a nightmare. What's the best part? They would think about me for the rest of their wretched lives, pondering the possibilities. I wish they had chosen differently. They regret every choice that brought them to this point. For what is the worst penalty of all? It's not rage. It isn't retaliation. People are forgetting it. And that, my last present to them, was that.